Exactly. Okay. Next group.
Yeah, so we kind of said in general, we said we want to convince them that one of our problems are real problems.
That is the kind of line of thinking that's going to get you to the exact best solution. Is practically a story. Percent of the stuff that matters about it, we can explain in 30 seconds.
Welcome to How to Pitch, or whatever they decided to call this talk. So I'm Kasper, I'm the co-founder of Carpe. It's an antiperspirant for sweaty hands and feet. And we just basically finished closing a $2 million round of fundraising this month. We don't have the money yet, so don't clap, it's bad luck. We should have the money in 2 weeks. But it's been a 6-month round of fundraising, and the reason we were able to do this, we were able to close the round, is just a lot of pitching to investors. So the Blueprint team decided to invite me here to talk about how to pitch. And I said, okay, great, so how many days is this workshop? And they said 40 minutes, which sucks because pitching is an extremely in-depth topic. It's really broad, it's really deep, and there's just so much you can learn about it because there's hours of TED Talks, there's like libraries full of books about pitching, and all of that stuff is actually really useful. Like if you guys want to get good at pitching, talk to me and I'll tell you 20 books to read. But today in 40 minutes, I'm trying to think what I can do to help you guys as much as possible prepare for the pitches you'll be doing at about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I think I have some good tips. And the good news is really that all of you guys actually pitch a lot. And you're going to keep getting better at pitching till the day you die because we all pitch every day. Every time it's a Wednesday night and we want to go to Shooters and our friends are tired and one of them has a midterm in the morning, but we really want to go to Shooters and we're like, come on, let's pregame, let's go to Shoots. That's a pitch. And anytime you're out of food points, yeah, we call it Shoots. Anytime you're out of food points and you know, you need to call your parents and have them send you more money, that's a pitch. And anytime you're filling out an application, anytime you're writing a cover letter, anytime you're updating your Tinder profile, that's a form of pitch. Because a pitch is really any time that you're trying to convince someone of something. And that seems like really, really basic, but I guarantee you that is the #1 mistake people make when they're pitching, especially entrepreneurs starting companies or people in your position trying to present projects, is you get so caught up in the project or the presentation or whatever that you really forget to take a step back and realize why you're there, what you're really trying to accomplish with this pitch. So I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice today that I wish I would have had when I was getting started with Carpe 3 years ago that I think would have helped me persuade a lot of people much quicker to help my co-founder David and me out with it. And the first one, which I think is the golden rule, is that one. Is that the better you understand who you're trying to convince and what you're trying to convince them of, the better your pitch is going to be. So that is #1. The reason I'm saying it's the single most important thing to understand who you're pitching to and what you're trying to convince them of, because for the past 18 hours, you guys have been so focused on your ideas that you might be forgetting exactly what this pitch is for, right? This pitch is just a small part of the entire thing. You've made an amazing idea, you made an amazing project, and this is kind of not even really completely about that. This is about convincing the judges what they need to be convinced of, and I think that is the kind of line of thinking that's going to get you to the exact best solution. So with Carpe, I spend 99% of my time with the company doing all sorts of business stuff that nobody's ever going to see, right? And thinking about all sorts of decisions that nobody's going to care about. But the 1% I need to tell to the judges is practically a story that, you know, I rarely think about during my day-to-day, but it's, or not the judges, but investors, but it's what I need to convince them of because, you know, in my case, I want investors' money. So what I'm saying is I'm going to VCs and I want to convince them that if they give me their money, you know, they're either going to make it back or they're going to have a great time losing it with me. So that is the first step in making a great pitch. So don't forget that as the day goes on. Remember who you're talking to. Remember what you want to convince them of. Not just tell them what you're working on, remember what you want to convince them of. The second part, and this is something I think you guys already have a great understanding of based on your 10-second pitches, is that pitching follows a power law, or some people call it an 80-20 rule, where basically 80% of the value of your pitch, 80% of what matters, comes in 20% of the time. So to give you an example, I give an hour-long pitch to VCs when I'm meeting with them in like their boardrooms. That goes into all sorts of details of the business. And then I have to present it to Melissa and Doug last fall, and Howie, who's this great guy at Duke I&E, saying you need to have a 5-minute pitch, and I freaked out because I said I need an hour to pitch, and I somehow crammed it down to 5 minutes, and I realized that 5-minute pitch contained basically 95% of all the important things that were in the hour-long pitch. And to take that to an extreme, we have a 30-second national TV commercial that contains about 80% of what matters in that hour-long pitch. To which, what I mean is, like, we have a full company with a lot of employees, and everything, like 80% of the stuff that matters about it, we can explain in 30 seconds. And not just what matters about, like, we can explain our idea in 30 seconds, we can explain why you should invest in Carpe in 30 seconds, or in the case of our TV commercial, we can explain why you should buy Carpe in 30 seconds. Now that doesn't go for everybody, that's just, we can explain it to the people who we care about. We can explain to VCs in 30 seconds why they should invest in Carpe, and in those 30 seconds we're going to use a lot of complex terms that only VCs really care about, and then when we explain in 30 seconds to people why they should buy Carpe, we're specifically talking to the people who can empathize with having sweaty hands and sweaty feet every day, which is what Carpe solves. So I think the next exercise I was thinking for you guys is basically, again, go down to the 10 seconds, and in 10 seconds, think about what you're trying to convince these judges of, distill it to 10 seconds. And I know you're trying to convince them of, from what I've heard of these groups, from like the judging rubric, it's 4 different things. Think about how, if you guys had to get up on that stage or into that science fair you're going to be doing at 4 p.m. and every team only had 10 seconds, how you would use your 10 seconds to score as many points in that rubric as possible. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes and then I'll hear from the teams again what your 10 seconds are. Go. Next group, what's your 10-second pitch?
We have a filter in the current untapped market where we can eliminate 80% of microplastics that are in the ocean while also creating fabrics and materials for consumer use.
Okay, so what in there is necessary beyond saying, we made a thing where we can take plastic from the ocean and turn it into clothes? Is that a simpler way of saying, like, basically what you said, or am I missing something?
No.
That's basically, so that's the kind of thinking I want everybody to do is like, you guys have been working on these incredibly complicated, difficult projects for 18 hours, and I've seen your whiteboards, like it's really impressive in those rooms. And it's really difficult to get out of that mind space and remember for a second that, you know, it doesn't need to be that complicated. We can really dumb it down. Like with Carpe, it's kind of difficult for me to go to pitches and basically say, we need something that stops sweaty hands and feet, because it seems to trivialize all the work we've done for the past 3 years, but that is 90% of what my company is, right? 2-second team, are you guys ready? Okay, next team.
There's a growing disconnect between people and nature, causing apathy over decreasing biodiversity. We've developed an application that enables anyone, anywhere, to learn from and appreciate the world around them, empowering a new generation of conservationists.
So what I'm trying to say here is the ways I try to like change your ideas and simplify them a bit, that's not necessarily the right way. That might not be the way to go. I might have said something and you guys like to be polite and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but I might have completely mischaracterized your idea, right? What I'm trying to show you is that you guys have been so in this and so dedicated to your idea and thinking along these same paths that it's sometimes difficult to get out of your heads and think about just how simply you can explain this to somebody else and how they're going to react to what you're saying, like whether you're convincing them, whether they get it, whether they don't get it. And so the third lesson I have for you today is that the way to make a great pitch is to listen. Because in my case, when I was pitching to VCs, for the first few months the pitch was terrible and the VCs were laughing at us. And that was great, like listening to them, seeing what they wanted to see that we didn't have, seeing what we had that was maybe too much and their eyes were glazing over, and that's how we developed the perfect pitch. So you can get a pretty good approximation by just pitching your project to the mentors here and to each other for the next hour and a half and really asking for tough feedback. Like just give them the 10-second pitch, and if they look bored, if they look like they're not getting it, that's feedback. If they ask a question that shows that they didn't get it, that's feedback. I'm really harping on this they didn't get it thing because in my experience, the number one thing I see in pitches is because, you know, the creators of the ideas are so thoroughly understanding of the idea, it's sometimes difficult for them to explain it in a comprehensible way, and you just don't realize that, right? So the 3 lessons today are: 1, your pitches are always trying to convince somebody of something. Be sure you really know what you're trying to convince people of, not just show them your project. Be sure you know what you're trying to convince them of. Know who you're trying to convince. The better you know them, the better, right? Like, you know your parents really well, so it's probably a lot easier for you to convince your parents to give you food points money than it is for me to convince your parents to give you food points money. The second part is the power law, right? So really work on the 10-second pitch for most of your time, then work on the 30-second pitch, and then after that, spend a little bit of time working on longer pitches. And the final thing is just listen. Just keep telling your pitch to a lot of people. I have one example of that always stands out in my mind. Last fall, we were preparing these Melissa and Doug pitches for this Duke project in entrepreneurship, and one of the entrepreneurs had honestly a really, really bad 4-minute pitch. And I told him, listen, man, this real pitch is in 24 hours. I want you to find 40 people in the next day, pitch to them, see how they react, listen to what they have to say, and just like kind of work that in. And the next day he delivered literally the best pitch of everybody there. Just because he'd been pitching to so many people, he'd been listening to them, and he figured out, you know, get out of your head. Don't think about what you want to say. Think about what people want to hear and about your project, right? Learn from what people want to hear. So with that, that's my advice on pitching. I hope it helped you guys a little bit. And I have another group coming in, but I'll be around until you guys are actually doing your project until you guys are actually presenting, in case anybody has any questions for me. So thank you guys.